I found the photo by accident, my broken frame sitting in a dusty cardboard box in my daughter's basement. Me, completely bald, smiling proudly beside her at her high school graduation, now covered in dust, replaced on the wall by her perfect new stepfather with his gleaming hair and practiced smile. Just a week earlier, she'd looked me in the eye and said in front of everyone, "At least Mom's new husband has hair." Those words stuck inside me like a nail. But what my daughter didn't know when she mocked my baldness was what I discovered next. Hidden beneath old tools and forgotten Christmas decorations, a black folder with medical forms, receipts, and horrifying before and after photos. A nurse's name I recognized, a signature I knew, a flash drive containing something I was never meant to see. My son-in-law wasn't just selling hair transplants, he was selling dangerous lies. And people were dying. Sometimes to protect the ones you love, you have to become the villain in their story. Even when it breaks your heart, follow our channel for more stories about family betrayal, difficult choices, and the price of truth. Tell us in the comments what you would do if you discovered your child was involved in something dangerous. Would you stay silent or risk losing them forever? Like and share if this resonated with you and let us know where you're watching from. I found the photo by accident. It was raining that Sunday when I drove to my daughter's house to drop off a birthday present for my granddaughter. Nobody had invited me to the party. I still remember the weight of that small, wrapped box in my hands, heavier than it should have been, like the burden of being forgotten. I entered through the garage like I used to before the divorce, when we were still considered family. The basement door was open, cardboard boxes stacked like monuments to a life I once had. And there it was, sitting atop one of those dusty boxes, a broken picture frame with my old photo inside. Me, bald as I've been since 35, smiling proudly next to my daughter on her high school graduation day. The glass was cracked, and a fine layer of dust covered our faces as if someone had tried to erase that memory. The new frame, the one hanging prominently in the living room, told a different story. My daughter, her mother, and that man, my ex-wife's new husband with his gleaming hair, perfect teeth, and that practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. The kind of man who looked like he belonged in those shopping mall advertisements, selling the idea of perfection. Just last week at my granddaughter's pre-birthday dinner, my daughter had looked me straight in the eyes and said it in front of everyone. "At least Mom's new husband has hair." The words stuck inside me like a nail. I laughed it off, of course. What else could I do? But inside, something died a little. It wasn't just the words. It was the way she looked at me now, like I was something outdated, disposable. The man who had raised her for 18 years, taught her to ride a bike, stayed up nights when she had fevers, had somehow become this balding inconvenience, replaced by someone more presentable. I stood there in that basement holding that broken frame and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, but a deep, hollow ache. The kind that starts in your chest and spreads until your fingertips tingle with it. When did I become so irrelevant to her? When did my worth become tied to something as trivial as hair? I set down my granddaughter's present on a nearby box and wandered deeper into the basement. The light was poor, a single bulb hanging from a chain casting long shadows across stained concrete. It smelled like most basements do, slightly damp with hints of laundry detergent, and that indefinable mustiness that accumulates in forgotten spaces. That's when I saw it. Among the forgotten tools and holiday decorations, there was a black folder that seemed out of place, too new, too clean for its surroundings. I don't know what compelled me to pick it up. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe something more. A sixth sense that fathers develop, an instinct that tells them when their children might be in trouble. The folder was heavy, filled with papers and what looked like contracts. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. Inside were documents, receipts, and before and after photos. Different faces, but the same pattern. People who'd undergone hair transplant procedures. Some wore forced smiles. Others had empty gazes that seemed to stare right through me. There was something unsettling about those photos. Something clinical yet unprofessional about the way they were taken. The lighting was harsh, the backgrounds varied. Hotel rooms, what looked like basement setups, places that didn't resemble proper medical facilities. One name at the bottom of a page caught my eye. Evelyn Sanders. I knew that name. She had been a nurse at the dermatology clinic downtown where I'd worked as a janitor for 15 years before they laid me off. Evelyn had disappeared suddenly, And later I'd heard rumors that she had died from complications during an experimental procedure. My hands started to shake. What was this doing here, in my daughter's basement? And why did some of these documents have my daughter's handwriting on them? As I flipped through more pages, reality began to sink in. The fancy house, the new car, the expensive schools for my granddaughter. It all made a terrible kind of sense now. My ex-wife's new husband, with his perfect hair and white-toothed smile, wasn't just in the hair transplant business. From what these documents suggested, he was running some kind of underground operation. Unlicensed, dangerous, and somehow my daughter was involved. I heard footsteps upstairs, the hollow echo of someone walking across the kitchen floor above me. I quickly put the folder back where I found it, but not before slipping one of the papers into my pocket. Evidence. Though of what, and for what purpose, I wasn't yet sure. As I climbed the stairs, each step feeling like I was aging another year, I realized that this was just the beginning. The beginning of something that would either destroy what was left of my family or save my daughter from whatever she'd gotten herself into. I never made it upstairs that day. I quietly slipped out the way I came, leaving my granddaughter's present on that box next to my dusty, broken picture. As I drove away, rain hammering on the roof of my old Buick, one thought kept circling in my mind like a trapped bird. Sometimes, the things we find in the dark are better left buried. But this secret, hidden in a black folder, was already clawing its way to the surface, and it was about to change everything. I didn't sleep that night. The paper I'd taken from my daughter's basement lay on my kitchen table like a poisonous thing. I must have made a dozen cups of coffee, each one growing colder than the last as I sat staring at that document. My hands trembled every time I reached for it, not from age, but from fear of what I might find if I looked too closely. Around 3 a.m., I finally gathered my courage. The living room lamp cast a yellow circle on the worn tablecloth as I spread out the paper. It was a medical consent form for something called Advanced Follicular Relocation Therapy. The patient had signed it with shaky handwriting, but it was the nurse's signature at the bottom that made my blood run cold. Evelyn Sanders. Evelyn. I remembered her clearly from my days as a janitor at Riverside Dermatology Center. Petite woman, maybe mid-40s, with deep laugh lines around her eyes and a collection of silly medical-themed pins she'd wear on her scrubs, little stethoscopes and band-aids that would make the kids smile. She always had a kind word for me, even noticed when I changed my mop technique to save my back. "Work smarter, not harder," she'd say with that gentle Mississippi accent. Then one day she just wasn't there anymore. The rumor around the clinic was that she'd died after some kind of elective procedure gone wrong. Something experimental. The doctors clammed up whenever her name was mentioned. The other nurses would change the subject, but the younger staff whispered when they thought no one was listening. 43, I heard one orderly say to another. That's what they called her. Patient 43. I pulled out my phone and typed Evelyn Sanders nurse death into the search bar. Nothing substantial came up. Just a brief obituary from 2 years ago stating she'd passed suddenly and was dedicated to her profession. No cause of death, no details. It was as if someone had erased everything about her except the most basic acknowledgement that she had existed. My hands were shaking harder now. I found myself reaching for the bottle of bourbon I kept in the back of my cabinet, a gift from my son-in-law 3 Christmases ago. For the distinguished gentleman, the card had read, as if expensive liquor could make up for the way he looked at me during family gatherings. I poured 2 fingers into a water glass and drank it down. Outside, the streetlights cast long shadows across my small yard. The neighborhood was silent except for the occasional passing car. I lived alone now in this little ranch house, the only thing I'd kept after the divorce. My ex-wife had wanted the bigger house in the suburbs, the one with the swimming pool where my daughter had learned to swim. I didn't fight it. What did a single man need with all that space? I thought about my granddaughter's birthday present still sitting on that box in the basement, a vintage jewelry box that played music when you opened it, the same tune my daughter had loved when she was little. Would she ever get it now? Or would it sit forgotten in that basement like my photograph, gathering dust until someone decided to throw it away? The bourbon wasn't helping. My mind kept circling back to Evelyn Sanders and those before and after photos in the folder. Those vacant eyes, the strange settings that looked nothing like proper medical facilities, and my daughter's handwriting on some of the forms. What had she gotten herself into? I needed to know more, but I couldn't just ask her. The way she'd looked at me lately, with that mixture of pity and disdain, she wouldn't tell me anything. She'd just assume I was being paranoid or trying to cause trouble for her mother's new husband. No, I needed to find out for myself, and I knew just where to start. The next morning, I drove downtown to the Riverside Dermatology Center. I hadn't been back since they let me go 5 years ago. Budget cuts, they said, though they hired someone younger the next week. The building looked the same. 6 stories of glass and concrete, with a curved entrance meant to look welcoming but somehow always seeming cold. I straightened my collar and practiced my story in my head. Just a former employee, curious about getting a consultation for hair restoration. The irony wasn't lost on me. The reception area had been remodeled, all sleek white surfaces and blue accent lighting now. Behind the desk sat a young woman I didn't recognize. Her name tag read, Melissa. "Good morning," I said, summoning a friendly smile. "I was hoping to get some information about your hair restoration procedures." She launched into a practiced speech about their various treatments, handing me glossy brochures with before and after photos that looked nothing like the ones I'd found. These were professional, well-lit, with happy clients beaming at the camera. I nodded along, then casually asked, "Do you know if Dr. Whitman still works here?" "He was recommended by a friend." "No, I'm sorry," she said. "We don't have a Dr. Whitman on staff." "Oh, my mistake," I said. "Maybe it was Sanders, Evelyn Sanders?" Something flickered across her face, so brief I almost missed it. Fear? Recognition? It was gone in an instant, replaced by a practiced smile. "No one by that name works here, sir, but Dr. Jennings is excellent with hair restoration. Would you like to schedule a consultation?" As she spoke, I noticed a man in scrubs coming through a door behind her. His face was familiar. Martin, one of the orderlies who'd been there during my time. He was older now, hair graying at the temples, but it was definitely him. Our eyes met, and I saw recognition dawn. "Mr. Crawford?" he said, momentarily forgetting himself. "Haven't seen you in years." This was my chance. "Martin, good to see you." "Hey, I was just asking about Evelyn Sanders. Terrible what happened to her." Martin's face went still. The receptionist was suddenly very interested in her computer screen. "I don't know what you're talking about," Martin said flatly, but his eyes told a different story. He knew, and he was terrified. "My mistake," I said quietly. "Must be thinking of someone else." I took the brochures and left, but not before I caught Martin making a phone call. His back turned to the reception area, voice low and urgent. Someone didn't want Evelyn Sanders' name mentioned, and now they knew I was asking questions. As I drove home, a text message pinged on my phone. It was from my daughter. "Dad, we need to talk. Come over tomorrow. Alone." I didn't go to my daughter's house the next day. Instead, I texted her that I was feeling under the weather and needed to rest. It wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach had been in knots since finding that folder, and sleep had become a distant memory. But the real reason was that I needed time. Time to understand what I was dealing with before walking into whatever conversation she wanted to have. Her response came quickly. "Feel better, Dad. We'll reschedule." No questions, no concern beyond those 5 words. The daughter who once called me 3 times a day when I had a cold now treated my excuses with clinical detachment. That stung more than I wanted to admit. While reorganizing my bedroom closet that afternoon, a task I'd been putting off for months, I found an old laptop. It had been my wife's before the divorce, left behind like so many other things she deemed unworthy of taking to her new life. I hadn't used it in years, but it still powered on after charging. Perfect. I didn't want whatever I was about to do next on my regular computer. Call it paranoia, but something told me to be careful. That night, I carefully removed the paper I'd taken from the folder in my daughter's basement from the envelope where I'd hidden it. The patient consent form for advanced follicular relocation therapy had a QR code printed in the bottom corner. It was faded, but still visible. I held my phone camera over it, hoping it would still work after being folded in my pocket. To my surprise, it did. My phone screen filled with a loading icon, then opened to a password-protected video file on a cloud storage site. The username displayed was NHC Training 43, Patient 43. There it was again. I stared at the password prompt for a long moment. What would they use? Something clinical? Something only insiders would know? I tried Evelyn. Nothing. Sanders. Nothing. Patient 43. Nothing. Then I remembered something from my days at the clinic. Dr. Lancaster, the head dermatologist, had a system for remembering passwords. He would take the first 3 letters of someone's last name, add their birth month, and then a special character. If Evelyn had set this up, maybe she used a similar pattern. I tried San 11, based on Sanders and her birth month of November, that I vaguely remembered from the birthday celebrations at the clinic. The screen flashed, and suddenly, I was in. The video began to play automatically on my phone. I quickly connected it to the old laptop for a larger view and turned the volume down low, even though I was alone in the house. The footage showed a room I didn't recognize, something like a hotel conference room with poor lighting and bland beige walls. A man stood at the front, his back to the camera at first. When he turned, I felt my breath catch. It was him, my ex-wife's new husband, Richard. His perfect hair gleamed under the fluorescent lights as he smiled at the group of about a dozen people seated in folding chairs. "Welcome to Advanced Follicular Relocation Therapy Certification," he began, his voice smooth and practiced. "Today you'll learn the proprietary NHC method that's transforming lives and bank accounts across the Southeast." The camera panned across the audience, mostly young people in their 20s, a few older, all leaning forward eagerly. They didn't look like medical professionals. They looked like people desperate for opportunity. Richard continued, "Our technique allows for quick procedures with minimal equipment. A standard hotel room becomes your clinic. 1 weekend of training, and you're ready to start earning 5 figures monthly." He moved to a portable table where a nervous-looking man sat in a chair. "Our subject today has agreed to demonstrate the procedure in exchange for a discounted rate." What followed made my stomach turn. Richard put on gloves, not medical grade, just thin latex ones, and began demonstrating a hair transplant procedure using tools that looked more appropriate for a home improvement project than a medical procedure. He talked through each step casually, as if he were showing them how to change a tire. "The beauty of our method is the speed," he explained, inserting what looked like a modified punch tool into the back of the patient's scalp without proper anesthetic. The man winced visibly. "Traditional clinics take hours, we do it in 45 minutes. The camera angle shifted, and suddenly I could see who was operating it. My daughter. She wasn't just passing papers. She was actively involved, documenting the whole thing. I watched as she zoomed in on Richard's handiwork, then panned to a whiteboard where pricing was listed. Basic package, $3,500, premium package, $7,000 VIP experience, $12,000. "Remember," Richard said to the camera with a wink, "all cash. No insurance. That's how we keep our special techniques proprietary." As the demonstration continued, the patient grew increasingly uncomfortable, his face pale and sweating. At one point, he asked to take a break, but Richard kept going. "Almost done, buddy. You want that hairline back, right? Think about the ladies." The others laughed. My daughter didn't. Through the viewfinder, I could see her hands trembling slightly as she held the camera. The video continued with Richard explaining how to set up mobile clinics in different cities, staying just long enough to perform procedures before moving on. 2 weeks in each location, then move. It keeps the licensing boards off our backs. Then came the part that made my blood run cold. A slideshow began with before and after photos, the same ones I'd seen in the folder. Richard clicked through them proudly. "This gentleman paid $10,000 for our premium package. Materials cost $230. The group murmured appreciatively. "This lady wanted hair thickening treatments. Told her we had a special female formula. Saline solution with food coloring cost us $5. Charged her $2,000. More laughter. Then a familiar face appeared on screen. Evelyn Sanders. "This was our learning experience," Richard said, his voice suddenly somber. "Patient 43. There are risks in this business. Sometimes, complications happen." The room went quiet. "If something goes wrong, document nothing. Say nothing. Refer them to a hospital in another county. You were never there." He clasped his hands together. "But with proper technique, these situations are extremely rare." My daughter's voice came from behind the camera, strained and uncertain. "Should we talk about liability insurance or something?" Richard gave her a sharp look. "Insurance creates paper trails. We don't do paper trails." Then his face softened. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I've done hundreds of these. It's foolproof." The video ended abruptly. I sat in the dark of my living room, the blue light of the screen reflecting off my face, feeling sick to my stomach. This wasn't just a questionable business. This was dangerous fraud that had already killed at least one person, and my daughter was in the middle of it. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my daughter again. "Dad, I found something missing from the basement. We need to talk. Tomorrow, please." She knew I had taken the document, and now I knew why she was so anxious to get it back. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, my mind racing. The man my ex-wife had left me for, the one with the perfect hair my daughter had mocked me about, was running a dangerous scam that preyed on people's insecurities. The same insecurities I'd been made to feel about my baldness. And tomorrow, I would have to face my daughter and decide what to do with the most dangerous knowledge I'd ever possessed. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evelyn Sanders's face on that screen labeled Patient 43. By morning, my decision was made. I'd meet with my daughter and see what she had to say. Maybe there was an explanation, something I was missing. Maybe she was in over her head and needed help getting out. The drive to her house felt longer than usual. Each traffic light seemed determined to turn red just as I approached. The suburbs where she lived with her family were pristine. Manicured lawns, luxury cars and driveways, a far cry from my modest neighborhood. Their house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, an imposing two-story colonial with white columns and a three-car garage. The kind of house that said, "We've made it." The kind of house built on lies. I parked on the street rather than in their driveway. Something about maintaining my own escape route felt important. As I walked up the curved pathway to the front door, I noticed the curtains in the upstairs window move slightly. Someone had been watching for me. My daughter answered almost before I knocked. She looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail. For a moment, she reminded me of the little girl who used to crawl into my lap when she was sick, seeking comfort. "Dad," she said, opening the door wider. "Thanks for coming." Her voice was subdued, nothing like the sharp tone she'd used the last few times we'd spoken. The house was quiet, too quiet for a home with a young child. "Where's Andrea?" I asked, referring to my granddaughter. "She's at a playdate. Richard's at a business meeting in Charlotte." The way she hesitated made me wonder if she even believed that herself anymore. She led me to the kitchen, all gleaming stainless steel and granite countertops. On the refrigerator were Andrea's drawings, bright crayon scribbles of stick figures holding hands. One was labeled Mommy, Daddy, Me in my daughter's handwriting. Another, tucked in the corner, showed a bald stick figure. Next to it, in wobbly letters, Grandpa. I swallowed hard. "Coffee?" she asked, already pouring me a cup. Her hands trembled slightly. "Thanks." I took the mug but didn't drink. "You wanted to talk about something missing from the basement." She flinched, then sank into a chair at the kitchen island. "You took something, didn't you? A folder with medical forms." I nodded, watching her face carefully. "I did." "Why?" Her voice cracked. "Why were you even down there going through our things?" "I came to drop off Andrea's birthday present. The basement door was open. I saw my old photo in a broken frame and then I found the folder." I paused, giving her a chance to explain, to defend herself, but she just stared at the countertop. "And then I found the video." Her head snapped up, eyes wide with alarm. "What video?" "The training video. The QR code on the consent form. Patient 43, Evelyn Sanders." All the color drained from her face. She gripped the edge of the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. "You watched it? All of it? Enough to understand what's happening. Enough to know that Richard is running an illegal operation that's already killed at least one person, and that you're involved." Tears welled in her eyes. She opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again, as if searching for words that wouldn't come. "What happened to Evelyn Sanders?" I asked, my voice gentler than I intended. My daughter took a shuddering breath. "It was an infection. The procedure. Richard said it was just a minor complication. He said it happens sometimes in legitimate clinics too, but she got worse. He told her to go to the emergency room in Greenville, but by then," her voice trailed off. "And you kept working with him after that?" "He said it was a freak accident, that he'd improved the techniques, and I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him." She wiped her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. "I'd already quit my job. We'd already moved here. Bought this house. The mortgage alone is $5,000 a month. So this is about money?" I couldn't keep the disappointment from my voice. "No, I mean, yes, at first. But it's more than that. It's about, she struggled for words. About what? About being somebody, she burst out. About not ending up like, she caught herself, but I knew what she'd been about to say. Like me, I finished for her. A balding janitor with nothing to show for his life. She had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. I set my untouched coffee down. But here's what I don't understand. Why did you say that about my hair? In front of everyone? At least Mom's new husband has hair. Why would you try to hurt me like that? Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't know, I was angry. You've been asking questions about where our money comes from. Richard said you were jealous of our success. And you believed him? She looked away. I wanted to. It was easier than facing the truth, which is that I made a mistake. A huge mistake. Her voice dropped to a whisper. And now I don't know how to get out. I reached across the island and took her hand. It felt small and cold in mine, just like when she was little and I'd walk her to school on winter mornings. Do you want to get out? She nodded, a barely perceptible movement. But I'm scared. There's so much evidence with my name on it. Richard said if anything ever came to light, I'd go down with him. He's made sure of it. That's why I found my signature on those forms, I realized aloud. He's been setting you up to take the fall, not just me. She met my eyes, and I saw real fear there. Last week I overheard him on the phone. He was talking about moving operations, starting fresh somewhere else. He said he needed to clean house first. I think he meant getting rid of anyone who could connect him to what happened to Evelyn. A chill ran through me. Does he know you took documents home? Does he know about the video? I don't think so. Those were backups I kept, just in case. She hesitated. Dad, I need to show you something else. She led me back to the basement, flipping on lights as we descended the stairs. The space looked different in the daylight, less mysterious, more mundane. She moved to a stack of plastic storage bins in the corner and pulled one out labeled Christmas decorations. Inside, beneath a layer of tangled lights and ornaments, was another black folder. I found these in Richard's home office safe last month, she said, opening the folder. They're the real patient records, not the sanitized versions we give out. This one is for a man in Charleston who developed a severe infection after a procedure. She flipped to another page. This woman in Savannah had an allergic reaction to the anesthesia Richard uses. He told her it was anxiety and sent her home. She ended up in the ICU. I felt sick as I looked through the documents. How many? 46 cases of serious complications. 3 deaths, including Evelyn. She closed the folder, her hands shaking. I've been gathering evidence, trying to figure out what to do. But every time I think about coming forward, I think about Andrea, about what would happen to her if both Richard and I went to prison. In that moment, I saw my daughter clearly for the first time in years. Not the sharp-tongued woman who had mocked my baldness, but a frightened mother trapped in a situation spinning out of control. She had made terrible choices, yes, but she was still my child. We need to go to the authorities, I said gently. You, me, with all of this evidence. They'll take into account that you're cooperating. What about Andrea? What about... A car door slammed outside. We both froze. Richard's home, she whispered, panic rising in her voice. He's supposed to be in Charlotte until tomorrow. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor above us. Then the basement door opened. Jennifer? Richard's voice called down. Are you down there? The neighbor said your dad's car is parked outside. My daughter looked at me with terrified eyes, clutching the folder to her chest. And in that moment, I knew we were out of time. Quick, put the folder in your shirt, I whispered to my daughter, my voice barely audible. Jennifer tucked the incriminating documents against her body, pulling her loose sweater over them. I grabbed a random box from nearby, Christmas ornaments, and placed it on the workbench. Richard's footsteps creaked on the stairs. I picked up a screwdriver from the toolbox and pretended to be tightening something on the box. My heart hammered against my ribs, but years of pretending everything was fine during my marriage had taught me how to keep a straight face. There you are, Richard said, his perfect smile appearing at the bottom of the stairs. He was dressed in expensive casual clothes, designer jeans, a polo shirt that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. His hair, the subject of my daughter's cruel joke, was immaculately styled. Frank, good to see you. He approached us, looking between my daughter and me with barely concealed suspicion. I thought you were in Charlotte, Jennifer said, her voice remarkably steady. Meeting ended early, he replied, eyes scanning the basement. What are you two doing down here? Dad wanted to look at the Christmas decorations, Jennifer answered before I could speak. I told him how Andrea wants to decorate early this year. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. In April? Planning ahead, I see. I wiped my hands on my pants. Just wanted to see if you had those vintage glass ornaments Jennifer's mother and I used to put up. Thought they might make a nice gift for Andrea, connect her to her family history. His expression soured slightly at the mention of family history. How sentimental. He turned to Jennifer. Honey, we actually need to talk about something important. Upstairs? She nodded, shooting me a nervous glance. Dad, why don't you head home? I'll call you later about those ornaments. I understood her meaning. Get out. Get safe. We'd figure out the next steps later. Sure thing, sweetheart. I hugged her, feeling the folder crinkle between us. Take care, I whispered in her ear. Richard walked me to the door, his hand firmly on my shoulder in a gesture that might have looked friendly to an observer but felt like a threat. Always good to see you, Frank, he said as he opened the front door. Jennifer really values family connections, even if she doesn't always show it. The implied warning wasn't subtle. I nodded, stepping outside. Family is everything to me, I replied, looking him directly in the eyes. I'd do anything to protect mine. His smile tightened. Drive safely now. I got into my car, heart still racing. As I pulled away from the curb, I watched Richard in my rearview mirror, standing on the porch until I was out of sight. The folder Jennifer had shown me contained evidence that could put him away for years. Fraud, practicing medicine without a license, manslaughter at the very least. But now it was trapped in that house with her and him. I was barely a mile from their neighborhood when my phone rang. It was Jennifer. Dad, she whispered. He's searching the basement. I told him I needed to use the bathroom. I don't think he believes our story. Where's the folder? I asked, pulling over to the side of the road. Still hidden under my sweater, but I don't know how to get it out of the house. He'll be watching me. Can you get to Andrea's playdate? Pick her up, then meet me somewhere. He wants to go with me to get her. Says we should have family time. Her voice cracked with fear. Dad, I think he knows something's wrong. Listen to me, I said firmly, trying to keep her from panicking. Act normal. Go get Andrea with him. Find an excuse to leave the house again later. Say you need groceries or something, then call me. Okay, she whispered. I have to go. He's coming upstairs. The call ended, and I sat there staring at my phone, feeling utterly helpless. I had to do something. But what? Go to the police? With what evidence? They'd need the documents Jennifer had. And if I made accusations without proof, Richard would just destroy everything before an investigation could begin. I started my car and headed home, my mind racing through scenarios. As I pulled onto my street, I noticed something unusual. 2 police cruisers parked in front of my house. My stomach dropped. Had Richard somehow called in favors? Did he have connections in law enforcement? I parked behind one of the cruisers and approached cautiously. A young officer stepped out to meet me. Mr. Crawford? He asked. Yes, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Is there a problem? Detective Williams would like to speak with you, sir. She's waiting inside. Inside my house? How did you get in? Your door was unlocked, sir, he said, though I knew for certain I'd locked it when I left. Heart pounding, I entered my own home. A woman in plain clothes sat at my kitchen table, flipping through what appeared to be the document I'd taken from Jennifer's basement. The consent form with Evelyn Sanders' signature. Mr. Crawford, she said, standing to greet me. I'm Detective Sarah Williams, Charlotte PD. We've been looking for this particular document for quite some time. How did you get that? I asked, still standing in the doorway. It was on your coffee table, sir. She gestured for me to sit. We're investigating a series of unlicensed medical procedures that have resulted in at least 3 deaths across the Southeast. One of them was a nurse named Evelyn Sanders. I sat down heavily. I know. Detective Williams studied me carefully. How much do you know exactly? I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of decision. Whatever I said next would set events in motion that couldn't be stopped. My daughter's involvement would come to light, but people had died. More would die if Richard wasn't stopped. My daughter, I began, my voice hoarse with emotion. She's involved, but I think she wants out. Her husband is running the operation. She has more evidence. Documents showing all the victims, records of procedures, everything. But she's with him right now, and I'm afraid for her safety. Detective Williams' expression remained neutral, but she leaned forward slightly. "Your son-in-law is Richard Mercer?" I nodded, surprised they already knew his name. "We've been building a case against him for months. A patient came forward after a botched procedure, but we haven't had enough evidence to move forward with charges." She tapped the consent form. "This helps, but we need those other documents you mentioned. She has them at her house hidden, but he's suspicious. I don't know how she can get them out without him noticing." Detective Williams pulled out her phone. "What's the address?" I gave her Jennifer's address, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. "What are you going to do?" "Surveillance for now. We can't move without more evidence, but we can keep an eye on the situation." She stood up. "Mr. Crawford, I need you to understand something. Your daughter's involvement in this operation makes her legally culpable. If she cooperates fully, we can work with the prosecutor on reduced charges, but there will be consequences." The words hit me like physical blows. Consequences. Charges. Prosecution. My little girl, who once made me get-well-soon cards with crayon drawings when I had a cold, could go to prison. "I understand," I said quietly. "We'll be in touch," Detective Williams said, heading for the door. "Don't contact your daughter right now. We don't want to tip off Mercer that we're watching. If she reaches out to you, tell her to call this number." She handed me a card. "And Mr. Crawford, thank you for doing the right thing. Not many people would when it's family involved." After they left, I sat alone in my silent house, staring at the detective's card. Had I just saved my daughter or condemned her? The weight of what I'd done, betraying her confidence, potentially sending her to jail, pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. My phone buzzed with a text. "Jennifer. He's acting strange. Keeps checking his phone. Says we're going out of town tomorrow. Emergency business trip. Taking Andrea to Mom's. I'm scared." I looked at Detective Williams' card, then back at the text. If I told Jennifer to call the detective, Richard might see the message. If I didn't, she might get on that plane with him, and I might never see her again. Another text came through. "Dad, please help me." My fingers hovered over the phone as 2 police cruisers silently pulled away from the curb outside my window. I stared at my daughter's text message for what felt like an eternity. "Dad, please help me." 4 simple words that carried the weight of a lifetime. Outside my window, the police cruisers had disappeared into the evening darkness, taking with them my certainty about what to do next. My hands trembled as I typed my response. "Bathroom, flush phone, 20 minutes. I hit send, then immediately deleted the message from my phone. It wasn't much of a code, but I hoped Jennifer would understand. Get to a bathroom where Richard couldn't see her, flush the toilet to cover any sounds, and I'd be there in 20 minutes. I grabbed my car keys and the detective's card, shoving the latter deep into my pocket. The drive to Jennifer's house was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. What if Richard checked her phone? What if he was watching her too closely for her to get away? What if the police were surveilling the house and saw me arrive? I parked a block away, in front of a neighbor's house that had been for sale for months. The street was quiet, most homes dark except for porch lights. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. I walked briskly, trying to look like an evening jogger who had slowed to catch his breath. As I approached Jennifer's house, I could see lights on in the living room and kitchen. Through the large front window, I caught a glimpse of Richard pacing, phone to his ear, gesturing animatedly. There was no sign of Jennifer or Andrea. I circled around to the back of the house, keeping to the shadows of the tall privacy fence that separated their yard from the neighbors. The gate squeaked slightly as I eased it open, making me freeze in place, but no one seemed to notice. I crept across the darkened yard to the back door. To my surprise, it opened before I could knock. Jennifer stood there, her face pale in the dim light, the folder clutched tightly against her chest. "He's on the phone with someone," she whispered. "Planning the trip." I told him I needed to pack some things for Andrea. She pulled me inside quickly, closing the door with barely a sound. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the glow of the hallway light. Jennifer led me to the pantry where we could speak without being seen from the living room. "I can't go with him," she said, her voice breaking. "I think he knows I found these documents. He's been watching me all day, checking my phone when I'm not looking." She handed me the folder. "Take this, it has everything, all the records, the real patient files, everything about Evelyn Sanders." I took the folder, feeling its weight, not just the physical heft of the papers inside, but the weight of what they represented. Evidence that could put Richard away for years. Evidence that implicated my own daughter. "Jennifer, the police came to my house today," I said softly. "They know about Richard, they're building a case." Her eyes widened with fear. Did you tell them about me? I couldn't lie to her. They know you're involved. But they said if you cooperate fully, they'll work with the prosecutor on reduced charges. She closed her eyes, a single tear tracking down her cheek. I'll go to jail. Maybe not, I said, though I knew it was a possibility. But Jennifer, if you run with Richard now, it will be so much worse when they catch him. And they will catch him. She nodded slowly, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a small flash drive. This has the video files, training sessions, patient consultations. He recorded everything, kept it as insurance in case anyone in the operation tried to turn on him. She let out a bitter laugh. He never thought I'd be the one to do it. I pocketed the flash drive, then took her hand. What about Andrea? She's upstairs, asleep. I told Richard I wanted her to stay with Mom while we were gone, but he said no. We're all going together. Her voice trembled. Dad, I think he suspects something. He keeps making comments about family loyalty, about how people who betray their family end up with nothing. A chill ran through me. We need to get you and Andrea out of here tonight. How? He's watching my every move. And where would we go? I can't go to Mom's, that's the first place he'd look. I thought for a moment. My house. The police already know about the situation. They'll protect you while they build their case. Jennifer shook her head frantically. I can't just walk out with Andrea. He'd stop us or follow us. Then we create a diversion, I said, my mind racing ahead. Call your mother. Tell her Andrea's sick and you need her to come over. Richard wouldn't suspect anything if his mother-in-law showed up, right? Maybe not, Jennifer agreed cautiously. But Mom won't help me against Richard. She thinks he's perfect. She doesn't need to know what's happening. Just tell her Andrea had a nightmare and is asking for her grandmother. Once she's here, you can say you need to run to the pharmacy for children's medicine. Take Andrea with you, I'll be waiting down the street. Jennifer considered this, then nodded slowly. It might work, but what about afterward? When Richard realizes we're gone? We'll go straight to Detective Williams. She gave me her card. I pulled it from my pocket and showed Jennifer. Once you're safely with the police, they can protect you. She took a deep breath, seeming to gather her courage. Okay, I'll call Mom. As Jennifer dialed her mother's number, I peered carefully around the pantry door toward the living room. Richard was still on the phone, his back to us as he gazed out the front window. I could hear fragments of his conversation, something about new location and fresh start. Jennifer's voice was steady as she spoke to her mother, the perfect concerned parent describing her daughter's upset stomach and tearful request for her grandmother. When she hung up, she whispered, "She's coming. 15 minutes. I'll wait outside," I said. "Text me when you're leaving, and I'll meet you at the corner of Maple and Oak." She nodded, then suddenly threw her arms around me, hugging me tightly. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered against my shoulder. "I'm sorry for everything, for what I said about your hair, for getting involved with this, for not seeing what he really was." I held her close, remembering the little girl who used to fall asleep in my arms watching Saturday morning cartoons. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to fix this." "What if we can't?" she asked, pulling back to look at me, her eyes filled with fear. "What if I go to jail? What happens to Andrea then?" "One step at a time," I said gently. "First, let's get you both safe. Then we'll figure out the rest." I slipped out the back door as silently as I had come, making my way back to my car with the precious cargo of evidence. As I settled in to wait, I looked at the folder and flash drive that now sat on the passenger seat beside me. The secrets they contained had destroyed lives, Evelyn Sanders, the other patients who had suffered, my daughter's future. But perhaps they could also save lives if used properly. Perhaps they could be the key to redemption, not just for Jennifer, but for all the victims who deserve justice. My phone lit up with a text. "Mom's here, leaving in 5. I started the car, hope and fear warring in my chest. We had one chance to get this right. One chance to escape the web of lies and danger that Richard had spun around my family. The night stretched out before us, full of uncertainty. But for the first time in years, I felt like a father again, protecting my child, fighting for her future. Whatever came next, we would face it together. I waited at the corner of Maple and Oak, engine idling, eyes scanning every shadow. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, the kind of stillness that feels like the moment before a storm breaks. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The folder and flash drive sat on the passenger seat beside me, containing enough evidence to destroy Richard's life, and possibly my daughter's. Minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. 5, 10, 15. No sign of Jennifer. I checked my phone repeatedly, but there were no new messages. A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. Something had gone wrong. I was about to drive back to the house when headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. Not Jennifer's SUV, but a smaller sedan. It slowed as it approached, then pulled alongside my car. The window rolled down, revealing Jennifer's mother, my ex-wife Linda. "Frank?" Her voice was tight with anger. "What are you doing here?" I struggled to maintain a neutral expression. "Just out for a drive, what are you doing here?" Jennifer called me about Andrea being sick, but when I got there, Richard told me she'd suddenly decided to go to the pharmacy herself. Linda's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Then I saw your car driving away. What's going on?" My mind raced. If Linda was here and Jennifer wasn't, where was my daughter? "I don't know what you're talking about," I said carefully. "I haven't seen Jennifer tonight." Linda studied my face, clearly not believing me. "Richard is worried about her. He says she's been acting strange lately. He thinks she might be having some kind of breakdown." The calculated way she said it sent a chill through me. Richard was already setting up his alibi, painting Jennifer as unstable. "I need to go," I said, putting the car in drive. "Frank," Linda's voice stopped me. "Whatever you and Jennifer are up to, it won't work. Richard has friends in high places. Don't make this worse for her." I drove away without responding, my mind churning. Linda would go straight back to tell Richard she'd seen me. If Jennifer had tried to leave with Andrea, he might have stopped her. I needed to act fast. I pulled over a block away and called Detective Williams. She answered on the second ring. "Mr. Crawford, I told you not to contact your daughter." "Something's wrong," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Jennifer was supposed to meet me with the evidence, but she never showed up. I think Richard might have figured out what she was planning." "Where are you now?" The detective's tone shifted to urgent professionalism. I gave her my location, then added, "I have some of the evidence with me. A folder of patient records and a flash drive with videos. But Jennifer had more documents at the house." "Stay where you are," Detective Williams ordered. "We'll send a patrol car to pick up the evidence you have and we'll do a welfare check at the house." "No," I said firmly. "If Richard sees police, he might. I don't know what he might do. Let me go back first. I can say I forgot something earlier. He won't suspect anything if it's just me." There was a pause on the line. "That's not protocol, Mr. Crawford. Protocol won't save my daughter and granddaughter if he's hurting them right now." Another long pause. "5 minutes," she finally said. "You have 5 minutes to go in and assess the situation. If you don't call or text me by then, we're coming in." I agreed and hung up, immediately driving back toward Jennifer's house. As I approached, I noticed the garage door was open. It hadn't been earlier. Richard's expensive sports car was gone. A new fear gripped me. Had he taken them somewhere? I parked in the driveway and rushed to the front door, ringing the bell several times. No answer. I tried the knob. Locked. Moving to the back of the house, I found the kitchen door still unlocked from when I'd left earlier. I slipped inside. "Jennifer?" I called out. "Andrea?" The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. In the living room, a lamp had been knocked over, its shade askew. Jennifer's phone lay on the coffee table, screen cracked. My heart hammered in my chest as I moved through the house, checking each room. Upstairs, Andrea's bedroom was empty, her bed neatly made. In the master bedroom, drawers had been yanked open, clothes strewn across the floor. A hasty packing job, or a struggle. I was about to call Detective Williams when I heard a sound from the closet, a soft whimper. I rushed over and pulled open the door. There, huddled among the hanging clothes, was Andrea, her small body trembling, tears streaking her face. "Grandpa?" she whispered as if afraid someone else might hear. I knelt down, opening my arms. "It's me, sweetheart. You're safe now." She flew into my embrace, clinging to me with surprising strength for a 6-year-old. "Daddy was so mad," she sobbed against my shoulder. "He was yelling at Mommy. He pushed her." "Where's your mom now?" I asked gently, trying to keep the panic from my voice. "Daddy took her in his car. He said they had to go away for a while." Andrea pulled back to look at me with tear-filled eyes. "Mommy was crying. She told me to hide and not come out until you came. Jennifer had known I'd come back. She'd protected her daughter the only way she could." I pulled out my phone and called Detective Williams. "Richard's taken Jennifer," I said without preamble. "Andrea's here with me, safe. But he's got my daughter." The detective's response was immediate. Is the child hurt? No, just scared. We've got officers on the way. We're also putting out an APB on Richard Mercer's vehicle. She paused. Did Andrea see which way they went? I asked gently, and Andrea shook her head. But, she added, Daddy said something about the lake house. That's where we go sometimes. The lake house, a vacation property about an hour north of the city. I relayed this information to Detective Williams. Good work, Mr. Crawford. Stay with the child. Officers will be there in minutes. I sat on the floor of the closet holding Andrea close as she cried herself into exhaustion. I whispered reassurances I wasn't sure I believed. Would they find Jennifer in time? What was Richard planning to do? Within 10 minutes, the house was swarming with police officers. A female officer gently took Andrea to get her a glass of water, while Detective Williams questioned me in the living room. We've located Mercer's car heading north on Highway 16, she informed me. State troopers are in pursuit, but staying back to avoid escalating the situation. What happens when they catch up to him? I asked, dreading the answer. That depends on him, she said grimly. But we have reason to believe he's armed. My blood ran cold. He has a gun? Jennifer never mentioned that. We found a receipt for a handgun purchase in his home office. Recent, legal, but concerning under the circumstances. I handed her the folder and flash drive, my hands shaking. Here's everything I have. Patient records, videos, everything Jennifer gave me. Please, just find her. Detective Williams took the evidence, her expression softening slightly. We will, Mr. Crawford. The best thing you can do right now is take care of your granddaughter. Hours passed in agonizing slowness. Andrea finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from crying. I sat beside her, stroking her hair, watching the clock tick past midnight. Officers remained stationed outside the house, but Detective Williams had left to coordinate the search for Jennifer and Richard. Just after 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Detective Williams. We found them, she said, her voice revealing nothing. At the lake house. Is Jennifer? I couldn't finish the question. She's alive. Being transported to County General now. Multiple contusions. Possible concussion. But she'll recover physically. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I nearly dropped the phone. And Richard? In custody. He surrendered after a brief standoff. She paused. Mr. Crawford, we found more documents at the lake house. Financial records. Offshore accounts. This operation was even bigger than we thought. Your daughter's testimony will be crucial. She'll cooperate, I said with certainty. She wants out of this. I believe that, Detective Williams said. And her actions tonight, protecting her daughter, gathering evidence, will count in her favor with the prosecutor. After hanging up, I sat in the dim light of the living room, watching Andrea sleep. Her small chest rose and fell peacefully, unaware of how drastically her life had just changed. Her father would go to prison. Her mother might too, though I would fight with everything I had to prevent that. In the morning, I would take Andrea to see Jennifer at the hospital. I would hold my daughter's hand and tell her everything would somehow be okay. I would promise to be there for both of them, no matter what came next. 24 hours ago, I'd been a lonely old man with a broken relationship with my child, mocked for my baldness, excluded from family gatherings. Now I was the guardian of a little girl, the protector of a family torn apart by greed and deception. As dawn broke outside the window, casting long shadows across the floor, I realized something profound. Sometimes the hardest choices, the ones that feel like betrayal, are actually the purest expressions of love. My daughter had chosen to protect her child over herself, and I had chosen justice over silence, even knowing it might cost me my relationship with Jennifer. That was what real love looked like. Not perfect hair or expensive houses or the approval of others. Just the quiet, devastating courage to do what's right, even when it breaks your heart. County General Hospital smelled like every hospital I'd ever been in. Antiseptic, with undertones of cafeteria food and despair. I held Andrea's small hand as we walked down the corridor to Jennifer's room. The nurse had warned us that she looked worse than she was. Facial contusions was the clinical term for what Richard had done to her. Is Mommy going to be okay? Andrea asked, her voice small and uncertain. Yes, sweetheart, I said, kneeling down to her eye level. She has some OEs on her face, but the doctors say she'll get better soon. Andrea nodded solemnly. At 6 years old, she understood more than I gave her credit for. She'd been remarkably resilient through the chaos of the past 24 hours. sleeping in my spare bedroom, eating the pancakes I'd made, slightly burned, but she didn't complain, and listening carefully when I explained that her daddy had done something wrong and would be away for a long time. When we entered the hospital room, Jennifer was sitting up in bed, staring out the window. One side of her face was swollen and purple with a line of stitches along her cheekbone. Her lip was split, and her right eye was nearly swollen shut, but she was alive. When she saw us, her good eye filled with tears. "Andrea," she whispered, opening her arms. Andrea hesitated, clearly frightened by her mother's appearance, then ran to the bed. Jennifer embraced her, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at her bruises. Over her daughter's head she met my eyes, a silent thank you passing between us. "How are you feeling?" I asked, pulling a chair closer to the bed. "Like I got hit by a truck," she said with a weak attempt at humor. "But the doctors say nothing's broken. Just a lot of bruising and a mild concussion." Andrea climbed carefully onto the bed beside her mother. "Does it hurt a lot?" Jennifer smoothed her daughter's hair. "Not too much. They gave me good medicine." She looked at me again. "Dad, thank you. For finding Andrea. For coming back." I took her hand, the one without the IV, and squeezed it gently. "Always." A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Detective Williams stood there looking apologetic. "Sorry to intrude. I just wanted to check on you, Ms. Mercer, and give you an update." Jennifer nodded and the detective entered, closing the door behind her. "Andrea, sweetheart," I said, "why don't you go to the playroom with the nice volunteer? I saw they have coloring books." After Andrea left with a hospital volunteer, Detective Williams pulled out her notepad. "Richard Mercer has been formally charged with assault, kidnapping, practicing medicine without a license, fraud, and manslaughter in the death of Evelyn Sanders. We're still building the case, but with the evidence you both provided, we expect additional charges." Jennifer closed her eyes briefly. "Will there be a trial?" "Possibly. His lawyer is already making noise about a plea deal, though." "And what about me?" Jennifer's voice trembled slightly. Detective Williams's expression softened. "The DA has reviewed your cooperation and the circumstances. You'll be charged with aiding and abetting, but they're recommending probation rather than jail time. You'll need to make restitution to victims, testify against your husband if it goes to trial, and possibly do community service." Relief washed over Jennifer's face. "No jail?" "No jail," Detective Williams confirmed. "The DA recognizes that while you were involved, you were also a victim of coercion and ultimately helped bring Mercer to justice." After the detective left, Jennifer cried, deep, racking sobs that seemed to come from her very core. I held her hand through it all, saying nothing, just being there. When the tears finally subsided, she looked exhausted but somehow lighter. "What happens now?" she asked. "One day at a time," I said. "You'll stay with me while you recover. We'll figure out the rest as we go." 3 months passed. The autumn leaves fell, winter arrived with a dusting of snow, and slowly, life found a new rhythm. Jennifer and Andrea moved into an apartment not far from my house. It was smaller than the colonial they'd left behind, but it was theirs. Safe, peaceful, honest. The legal proceedings ground on. Richard took a plea deal, 20 years with possibility of parole after 15. He never once asked about Andrea. Jennifer filed for divorce the day after he was sentenced. The victims of his scam were identified and contacted. Jennifer worked with the prosecutor's office to ensure they received compensation from the assets that weren't seized. It wouldn't undo the damage, especially for Evelyn Sanders' family, but it was something. Throughout it all, Andrea remained remarkably resilient. She missed her father at first, asking when he would come home. But as weeks passed, those questions came less frequently. She settled into her new school, made friends, and took to spending Friday nights at my house, where we'd build blanket forts and watch Disney movies until she fell asleep on my shoulder. One Saturday afternoon in early spring, Jennifer called and asked me to come over. "I need your help with something," she said, not elaborating further. When I arrived, she and Andrea were in the living room, surrounded by picture frames and tools. "We're hanging photos," Andrea announced proudly, holding up a hammer nearly as big as her arm. Jennifer took the hammer gently. "Maybe let Grandpa handle that part, sweetie." As I looked around, I realized what they were doing. They were creating a gallery wall of family photos, but not the carefully curated, Instagram-perfect portraits that had hung in the old house. These were real moments. Jennifer as a little girl on her bicycle, Andrea's first day of kindergarten, the 3 of us at the zoo last month. And there, in the center, was the photo from Jennifer's high school graduation. Me, completely bald, standing proudly beside my daughter in her cap and gown. The same photo I'd found dusty and forgotten in a broken frame in her basement all those months ago. "Where did you get this?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "I saved it," Jennifer said quietly. "After that day in the basement, I hid it in my closet. It was the only thing I took when we left that night." She handed me a nail and pointed to the center spot on the wall. "Will you do the honors?" With careful precision, I hammered the nail and hung the photo, stepping back to see it properly displayed. No longer hidden, no longer something to be ashamed of. Just a father and daughter, captured in a moment of genuine joy. "Perfect," Jennifer said, coming to stand beside me. Andrea joined us, slipping her small hand into mine. "Grandpa," she said, looking up at me with serious eyes, "Mommy says you're a hero." I looked at Jennifer, surprised. She met my gaze steadily, the fading yellow bruises on her face a reminder of everything we'd been through. "Not a hero," I said gently, "just someone who loves you both very much." Jennifer smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "Sometimes," she said, "that's exactly what a hero is." As we stood there together, looking at the portrait now hanging proudly on the wall, I realized something profound. Sometimes the things that truly matter aren't the perfect hair, or the big house, or what others think of you. Sometimes they're as simple as a photograph in a place of honor, a child's hand in yours, and the knowledge that after everything, you're finally exactly where you belong. In the shadows of family, we sometimes find our truest selves. Frank Crawford's journey, from a mocked, balding father to a protector willing to risk everything, reminds us that true strength isn't measured by appearances or others' approval. It lies in the quiet courage to stand for what's right, even when the cost is devastating. What would you do if faced with such an impossible choice? Would you protect the image of family at any cost? Or would you fight for justice, knowing it might permanently sever the bonds you've spent a lifetime building? The hardest truth about parenthood is that sometimes loving your child means being willing to lose them. Frank didn't just save lives by exposing his son-in-law's deadly scam. He showed his daughter what real integrity looks like, not in speeches or life lessons, but in actions that cut to the bone of who we are. When was the last time you chose a difficult truth over a comfortable lie? When did you last stand up for what's right when everything you loved hung in the balance? From wherever you're watching this story today, take a moment to reflect on the invisible battles others might be fighting. The father sitting alone at his daughter's wedding, the mother who seems too quiet at family gatherings, the friend who's suddenly distant. They may be carrying burdens heavier than we can imagine. If this story touched something in you, please share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the most profound acts of love look nothing like love at all. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that illuminate the complicated grace of being human, and leave a comment telling us what you would have done in Frank's position.